The orbital city of Halcyon 9 floated high above a glowing blue planet, surrounded by thousands of stars that shimmered like tiny lanterns in an endless night. It was home to many alien species, tall, short-scaled, feathered, soft-skinned, all living together in peace. The city was full of lights, machines, and the constant hum of power that ran through its silver corridors. In one quiet corner of the city lived a gentle alien woman named Lyra. Her skin shimmered faintly like pearls under the station lights, and her eyes held the sadness of someone who loved deeply, but had lost more than most could understand. She lived in a small apartment with her only daughter, Arua, a child unlike any other. Arua was small and delicate, with soft lavender skin and hair that looked like strands of silver mist. But what set her apart were her eyes, glass white with no color, no movement, no sign of focus. From the moment she was born, the doctors had said the same thing. Arua was blind. They tried everything: light therapy, neural mapping, even translating sound into visual code. But nothing changed. Arua never reacted to light or color. She lived in darkness, yet Arua never cried about it. She was calm, almost peaceful, and always smiling softly. She would sit by the window, though she couldn't see the stars, and hum little songs that made the air around her feel warmer. Sometimes she would laugh for no reason at all, her face turned toward the ceiling as if listening to something no one else could hear. Lyra loved her daughter fiercely, but her heart carried constant worry. How would Arua live in this world of machines and light if she could never see them? Lyra worked in a data library on the upper decks, while Arua stayed home or in the care of the education center for children with special needs. Every day Lyra prayed silently that some miracle would help her little girl. On the lower decks of Halcyon 9, far away from the shining domes and research towers, worked a human janitor named Thomas Hale. He was one of the few humans on the station. Humans were considered strange by many aliens, emotional, stubborn, always curious about everything. Thomas was all of those things, but also kind. He was a single father, raising his young son, Adam, who lived far away on Earth with Thomas's sister while Thomas worked to earn enough credits for their future. Every evening, Thomas cleaned the long corridors with his old maintenance droid. He repaired panels, swept dust, and replaced filters. Most people never noticed him, but he noticed everything. Maybe it was his human habit, always looking for patterns, for stories in small details. And sometimes, when his shift ended, he passed through the quieter residential areas, where he would see Lyra and her daughter sitting near the observation dome. The first time he saw Arua, she was sitting cross-legged on the floor, her small fingers tracing the metal tiles as she hummed softly, her face turned toward him before he even spoke. It surprised him. She couldn't see him, yet it felt as though she had noticed him long before he arrived. Lyra smiled politely and greeted him. Thomas, shy but kind, nodded and said hello. Then Arua spoke in a quiet voice. "You sound like rain, mister." Thomas blinked. "Rain?" "Yes," she said, tilting her head. "Soft, but it makes the floor happy." Lyra blushed, a little embarrassed, but Thomas chuckled. That's a nice way to think about it. He didn't think much more of it that night, but something about the child stayed in his mind. Maybe it was the way she seemed aware of things she shouldn't be able to sense. Maybe it was her peaceful confidence. A few nights later, Thomas passed by again. This time he was fixing a maintenance panel near Lyra's door. The girl sat nearby humming again. He noticed how she moved her head, not randomly but following something invisible like a rhythm only she could feel. When he dropped a small metal tool by accident, she reached out and caught it before it hit the ground. He froze. "Wait, how did you do that?" Arua tilted her head, holding the tool. "It was falling." "I saw it," Lyra gasped softly. "Sweetheart, you can't see." Arua frowned as if confused. "Not with my eyes. With the light that sings." Thomas slowly knelt beside her. "The light that sings?" he asked carefully. She nodded. "It's everywhere. In the floor, in you. You shine when you talk." Lyra's heart pounded. She had heard her daughter say strange things before, but never like this. Thomas looked thoughtful, his old human mind connecting pieces that others might ignore. He took out his small maintenance scanner, an old, bulky device that detected electrical signals and air pressure changes. He turned it on. It made a soft humming noise. Instantly, Arua turned her head toward it, smiling. "You like that sound?" he asked. "It's blue," she said simply. "It moves in circles." Lyra stared. Thomas looked at his scanner again. You see sounds as colors? Arua nodded. All the time. Some are too bright, some hurt. But yours is soft. Thomas sat back amazed. He had heard of species with different sensory systems. Some saw heat, some saw electromagnetic fields. But Arua was part of Lyra's species, and none of them could do that. And no one had ever suggested her blindness was something else, something more. He looked up at Lyra gently. Maybe she isn't blind. Maybe she sees differently. Lyra wanted to believe that, but after so many failed hopes, she was afraid to. The doctor said her visual nerves don't work, she said quietly. Maybe not for normal light, Thomas said. But maybe for something else. Sound, energy, vibration, frequencies. He noticed how the child's head turned slightly every time the cleaning drones buzzed past. She smiled each time, as if the hum of their engines painted pictures in her mind. To her, the world wasn't dark. It was full of invisible motion. That night, Thomas stayed a bit longer. He asked if he could visit again after work just to talk. Lyra hesitated at first, but something in his calm, sincere tone made her agree. It had been years since anyone had taken real interest in Arua beyond pity. The next evening, he returned with a small sound generator, something he used to test echo mapping in pipes. He played a low tone. Arua immediately lifted her head. When he changed the tone higher, she turned away, covering her ears. Then, at a mid-level frequency, she pointed across the room and said, "The wall's cracked." Thomas frowned and checked the panel she pointed at. To his shock, there was indeed a small hairline crack where energy was leaking, invisible to the eye but real. The girl had somehow sensed it. Lyra could barely speak. How did she know that?" Thomas whispered. "She's picking up vibrations the rest of us can't. She's not blind. She's tuned." Arua smiled proudly, though she didn't understand what he meant. "The room is singing," she said softly. "You fixed it." When Thomas left that night, his mind was racing. He had come from Earth, where humans were often seen as the lesser species in the Great Galactic Alliance. Weaker, slower, too emotional. But at that moment he realized something that made him quietly proud. Humans noticed things others overlooked. Where technology said impossible, curiosity whispered, maybe. The next morning, the stars outside Halcyon 9 shimmered in strange patterns. The station's lights flickered for a moment, a rare glitch. Arua woke up before anyone else and walked to the window. Though she could not see it the way others did, she felt the rhythm of the stars change. It pulsed like a heartbeat, slow and deep. When Lyra came to her side, the girl said softly, "The sky is humming." Lyra brushed her daughter's hair gently, thinking it was just imagination. But somewhere deep inside, she began to wonder if Thomas Hale, the human janitor, was right. Perhaps her daughter's blindness was not a curse, but a gift beyond their understanding. And for the first time in years, hope returned to her heart. A small, bright, human-shaped hope, carrying a mop, a gentle smile, and an endless belief that there is always more to see than meets the eye. The next few days on Halcyon 9 were quiet, but Thomas couldn't stop thinking about Arua. Every time he cleaned the corridors, he caught himself listening to the faint hum of the machines, the soft flicker of power lines, the whispering pulse of the city. It made him wonder what the world looked like to her. Maybe it wasn't darkness at all, but a sea of glowing sounds and singing lights. He decided to visit Lyra and Arua again after his shift. He brought a small box full of old tools and a worn maintenance scanner. When Lyra opened the door, she looked surprised but not unhappy to see him. "You came back," she said softly. Thomas smiled. "I told Arua I'd show her something." Arua ran forward, her little feet tapping on the metal floor. "Hello, Mr. Thomas," she said, smiling brightly. "I heard your footsteps from far away. They're happy today." He laughed. "You can tell that from footsteps?" She nodded, as if it was the most natural thing in the universe. Thomas sat on the floor and set up his scanner. He explained that it could detect sound, heat, and energy. Lyra watched with a mix of curiosity and worry. She wanted to believe in what Thomas saw in her daughter, but she was also afraid to hope too much. He turned on the scanner, and it began to hum softly. Arua's head turned toward it immediately. Her face lit up like she was watching something beautiful. "It's blue again," she said. "It's spinning faster now," Thomas smiled. "Can you tell me when it changes?" She nodded. He adjusted the frequency and Arua's expression shifted. Now it's green, she whispered. Now yellow. Oh, that one's too bright. He stopped. Okay, no more bright ones. Lyra gasped quietly. She could hear nothing but the hum. Yet her daughter was describing invisible colors that matched the sound waves perfectly. Thomas wasn't a scientist, but he knew what he was seeing. The girl was perceiving frequencies beyond normal vision. Somehow her brain had replaced sight with something even deeper. Thomas thought for a long moment. Maybe she's not seeing through her eyes, he said softly. Maybe she's feeling the energy around her. That night they ran more small tests. Thomas played gentle tones from his device, and Arua pointed exactly where they came from, even when he hid the device behind walls. She laughed whenever the lights flickered or the maintenance drones buzzed by. They tickle, she said. They make pictures in my head. Lyra watched with tears in her eyes. She had always feared her daughter lived in darkness, but now she saw the truth. Arua was surrounded by light, just a different kind of light. She could see the rhythm of the station, the heartbeats of machines, and maybe even the whispers of the stars. Over the next week, Thomas visited every evening. He told her stories of Earth, of rain, of oceans, of the way sunlight danced through trees. Arua listened with wonder. Do trees sing? She asked once. They do, Thomas said with a gentle smile. If you listen closely enough. Arua nodded thoughtfully. Then I would like Earth. I think it sings too. But one night, as the three of them sat near the window, the lights in the room flickered strangely. The floor rumbled very softly and a faint alarm tone echoed through the corridor. Lyra frowned. That's odd. The systems are stable. Thomas checked his scanner and the readings were strange. The power levels were shifting rapidly. Probably a small glitch, he said, though he didn't sound sure. Arua's smile faded. Her head tilted. It's too bright, she whispered. What do you mean? Lyra asked. The light inside the walls, Arua said, holding her hands over her ears. It's getting louder. It hurts. Thomas quickly turned on his scanner again. The readings were spiking, frequencies that shouldn't exist. He realized the noise wasn't just in Arua's mind. Something real was happening. The hum of the reactor deep below the decks was changing pitch. He looked at Lyra. I think something's wrong with the energy grid. Lyra's expression turned serious. That can't be. The station's AI monitors everything. Arua stood up, trembling. It's not the machines, she said softly. It's the planet. The song is breaking. Thomas didn't understand, but he trusted her. Can you show me where it's strongest? He asked gently. She pointed toward the far corridor, the direction of the main reactor chamber. Down there. It's red and bright. It feels angry. Thomas didn't waste time. He contacted maintenance control and told them he detected abnormal frequency patterns. The technician laughed at first, but when Thomas sent his scanner data, the laughter stopped. Wait, these readings shouldn't exist, the voice said. We're sending engineers immediately. By the time they arrived, the hum had grown louder. Even those who couldn't sense it could feel something strange, a vibration deep in the air. Arua clung to her mother's hand. It's breaking, she whispered again. Thomas held her other hand. Then help us fix it. The engineers brought their equipment, but none of their instruments could pinpoint the source of the resonance. It was Arua who suddenly stepped forward and pointed at a thick containment wall. Behind there, she said. That's where it's singing wrong. They followed her to the reactor's harmonic stabilizer. The machine controlled the flow of energy that kept the entire station safe. Somehow a hidden resonance had built up inside the structure, something even the AI didn't notice. The readings matched the same strange frequencies Arua had felt earlier. Thomas turned to Lyra. She's the only one who can sense it clearly. Lyra's heart raced. But she's just a child. Maybe, Thomas said softly, but she's seeing what none of us can. He began to adjust the control dials while Arua stood beside him, guiding him with her voice. A little to the left, she said quietly. Now the color is softer. Now it's almost quiet. The engineers watched in stunned silence as Thomas followed her directions. The readings on their screen slowly returned to normal. The hum faded away. The reactor stabilized. Halcyon 9 was safe again. When it was over, everyone in the chamber stood in silence. The lead engineer finally spoke. That shouldn't have been possible. Lyra knelt beside her daughter, tears streaming down her face. You saved us, she whispered. You truly can see the light no one else can. Arua smiled shyly and said, It's not light, Mama, it's songs. Thomas knelt too, gently resting a hand on the girl's shoulder. You saw what even machines couldn't. That's something special, Arua. She looked up at him. You helped me listen, Mr. Thomas. The engineers began to record the data, calling it a quantum empathy event. They tried to give it technical names, but Thomas didn't care about the science. He just looked at the little girl who had seen the invisible and saved them all. In the following days, the story spread quietly through the station. People began to visit Lyra and Arua, bringing gifts and questions. Some wanted to study her. Others simply wanted to thank her. But Lyra protected her daughter carefully. She's not a project, she told them. She's a child who listens to the universe. Thomas continued to visit. Sometimes they just talked about Earth, about music, oceans, and colors she couldn't see but could imagine. Arua said she could feel those colors now too. Your stories paint them in my head, she told him once. Blue feels calm. Green feels alive. Gold feels like you, Mr. Thomas. He smiled quietly at that. He didn't know what future awaited Arua, but he knew one thing. Humanity, small and often underestimated, had made a difference. Not through force or power, but through kindness and curiosity, by caring enough to notice what others ignored. On the final night before Thomas's next work rotation, Lyra and Arua stood with him near the glass dome that overlooked the stars. The galaxy glimmered outside like a river of light. Arua reached out and took both their hands. It's all singing, she whispered happily. The stars, the ships, the people, even the dark. It's all one song. Thomas looked at the endless sky and smiled. Then keep listening, Arua. Maybe you'll teach us how to hear it someday. The child nodded. You already do, Mr. Thomas. You just use your heart. As the stars shimmered brighter, the orbital city floated in silence. Safe, peaceful, and full of unseen music. Somewhere deep in that harmony, a small human heart and a gifted alien child had changed the melody of the universe forever. And the stars, if one listened closely enough, seemed to hum back in thanks.